The night I unlocked my grandmother's farm for the first time, I thought I was finally leaving my past behind, but before sunrise, I realized someone else had already been living there. And what I found inside the barn completely changed everything I thought I knew about my family. I grew up in an orphanage. No parents, no visits, no holiday cards. Just routines and quiet hope that someday someone would come for me. They never did. The only person who ever wrote to me was my grandmother, but I never met her in person. She sent short letters twice a year, always ending with the same sentence: "One day this land will be yours." I honestly thought she was just being kind. Then, right after my 25th birthday, I got a call saying she had passed away, and I was listed as the only heir to her farm. Before we go further, if you enjoy real emotional stories like this, take a second to like the video and subscribe to Karen Stories Daily. It really helps the channel grow, and most people watching aren't subscribed yet. Alright, back to the story. The farm sat 3 hours outside the nearest city, surrounded by open fields and old trees that looked like they'd been there longer than anyone alive. When I arrived, the place felt frozen in time. The house was small but solid, paint faded, porch slightly crooked, but it felt peaceful. For the first time in my life, I stood somewhere and realized I actually belonged there. The lawyer had warned me the property hadn't been visited in months. Utilities were barely running and neighbors kept their distance. Still, something felt off the moment I stepped out of my truck. The barn doors were slightly open. I assumed wind had pushed them apart, but the air inside felt warm, not abandoned warm, lived-in warm. At first, I laughed at myself. Maybe animals got inside. Maybe squatters had passed through weeks ago. I grabbed a flashlight and walked closer. Every step echoed louder than it should have. The wood creaked under my boots and dust floated through the beam of light. Then I noticed footprints. Fresh ones. My stomach tightened instantly. Someone had been here recently. I called out, trying to sound confident even though my voice betrayed me. No answer, just silence, and then a faint sound from behind stacked hay bales. Movement. I froze. A man slowly stood up from the shadows, hands raised halfway like he didn't want to scare me. He looked tired, maybe late 50s, beard untrimmed but eyes sharp. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, he said, "You must be her grandson." I didn't know whether to run or ask questions. He introduced himself as Walter. According to him, my grandmother had allowed him to stay in the barn years ago after he lost his home. He claimed he helped maintain the land, fix fences, and keep trespassers away. My first reaction was disbelief. Why would my grandmother never mention this? Walter didn't argue. Instead, he walked to a small toolbox and handed me an envelope with my name, written in handwriting I immediately recognized from childhood letters. Inside was a note from my grandmother. She explained she trusted Walter because he had protected the farm during difficult years. She asked me not to force him out immediately and said he knew things about the property I would need to understand. I didn't know what to think. Part of me felt angry. Another part felt strangely relieved that someone had cared for the place when I couldn't. Over the next few days, Walter showed me around the farm. He knew every fence post, every irrigation line, every hidden trail through the woods. He spoke about my grandmother with respect, not ownership. Slowly, my suspicion faded, but the peace didn't last. 3 days after I moved in, a black SUV pulled into the driveway. A woman stepped out wearing expensive clothes and the kind of confident smile that never feels friendly. She introduced herself as Diane, president of the nearby land association. According to her, the farm had outstanding compliance issues. I had no idea what she meant. She started pointing out small things: an old tractor parked outside, fencing repairs, barn usage. Then she casually mentioned that the association had plans to modernize surrounding properties and suggested selling the land would be easier for everyone. That's when I realized this wasn't a welcome visit. It was pressure. Walter later told me developers had tried to buy the farm for years. My grandmother refused every offer. Apparently, the land sat in the middle of a planned expansion area, and without it, their project couldn't connect properly. Suddenly, inheriting the farm didn't feel lucky anymore. It felt like stepping into a fight I didn't understand. Strange things began happening after Diane's visit. Survey flags appeared near property lines overnight. Someone cut part of the fence along the north field. A warning notice showed up claiming livestock violations even though I didn't own animals yet. Each time, Diane insisted it was just procedure. One evening, Walter showed me something hidden behind the barn wall, an old locked cabinet built into the structure itself. Inside were folders filled with property maps, legal letters, and rejected purchase offers dating back decades. My grandmother had been documenting everything, and one document stood out. A proposal showing the farm wasn't just farmland, it controlled water access for hundreds of surrounding acres. If the developers owned this land, they controlled the entire area. That's when I understood why someone might want me gone before I learned the truth. That same night, lights appeared near the far field. Not headlights passing by, stationary lights. Someone was on the property again. And this time, they weren't hiding. The lights in the far field didn't move. They stayed fixed, glowing through the darkness like someone wanted to be seen but not recognized. My first instinct was to call the police, but Walter stopped me. He quietly said this wasn't the first time people had come onto the land after sunset. According to him, ever since developers realized my grandmother would never sell, they started pushing boundaries, hoping intimidation would eventually work. We grabbed flashlights and walked toward the field together. Every step felt heavier than the last. The night air was cold, and the sound of insects suddenly disappeared as we got closer. When we reached the fence line, we saw two men placing stakes into the ground, measuring distances like they already owned the place. I shouted that they were trespassing. One of them barely looked at me and said they were conducting a survey authorized by the Land Association. That name again? Diane. I told them the property was private and demanded they leave. They hesitated just long enough to make it clear they didn't take me seriously, then slowly packed up and drove away. The next morning, I received an official-looking letter claiming part of my land overlapped with a shared development corridor. It sounded complicated, but something about it felt wrong. Walter encouraged me to contact a local attorney my grandmother had trusted for years. When I met him, he smiled the moment I mentioned her name. He told me my grandmother had prepared for this exact situation. According to the records, the farm's ownership included historical water rights older than the surrounding association itself. That meant no development project could legally proceed without my permission. The land wasn't just valuable, it was essential. Suddenly, Diane's behavior made sense. A few days later, she returned, this time with 2 association board members. Her tone was no longer polite. She warned me that refusing cooperation could result in fines, inspections, and legal complications. She spoke like someone used to people backing down. Instead of arguing, I handed her copies of the attorney's findings. I watched her confidence crack for the first time. She tried to dismiss it, saying their lawyers would review everything. But the pressure tactics stopped working after that. Notices slowed. Survey flags disappeared. For a brief moment, things became quiet again. Then the real shock came. The county sent inspectors to review unauthorized survey activity reported on my land. Apparently, the association never received legal approval to conduct measurements. Diane had acted without authorization, assuming I wouldn't challenge her. The investigation spread quickly. Neighbors began asking questions. Some residents admitted they were told the farm had already agreed to sell. Others were upset HOA funds were being used for projects tied to private development deals. At the next public meeting, I attended for the first time. People expected confrontation, but I simply explained the truth calmly. The land wasn't for sale, and no one had permission to enter it. I also made it clear I wasn't against neighbors, I just wanted boundaries respected. The room shifted instantly. Residents realized the conflict wasn't homeowner versus community. It was leadership pushing an agenda without transparency. Within weeks, Diane faced internal complaints. Financial reviews started. Board members distanced themselves from her decisions. Eventually, she resigned before the investigation finished. And just like that, the pressure vanished. Life on the farm slowly became what I imagined when I first arrived. I repaired fences, planted new crops, and learned skills my grandmother probably wished she could have taught me herself. Walter stayed on, not as someone hiding in the barn anymore, but as a partner helping me rebuild the place properly. One evening, while clearing old storage in the house, I found another letter addressed to me. In it, My grandmother wrote that land isn't valuable because of money, it's valuable because it gives people roots. She said she hoped the farm would finally give me something I never had growing up, a home that couldn't be taken away. Standing on the porch that night, watching the sun set across fields that were finally peaceful, I understood what she meant. The barn no longer felt mysterious. The farm no longer felt intimidating. It felt alive. And the strange part is, the thing I inherited wasn't just land. It was proof that someone had always planned for me to have a future, even when I didn't know it yet. If you made it this far, I'd really like to know your thoughts. Would you have trusted Walter when you first found him in the barn, or asked him to leave immediately? Tell me honestly in the comments, because I read them all. And if this story touched you even a little, share it with someone who believes good endings still exist. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Karen's Stories Daily for more powerful real-life style stories. You never know which story might stay with you long after the video ends.